So, Steve, you say that that argument's a lot of greenhouse gas. Why?
Well put. I like that one. Look, we did our own study at Heritage Foundation at our Center for Data Analysis. We found about 500,000 job losses. You don't have to kind of imagine what this would be like. We saw what regulations under Obama on climate change did to the coal industry, where we lost several tens of thousands of coal miners, partly because of lower gasoline prices, natural gas prices, but in no small part because of the regulations that really stuck a knife in their back. And by the way, those statistics that CNN keeps putting up about the number of jobs, wind, solar, the number for the oil and gas industry is closer to 6 to 10 million jobs. So when you're talking about moving beyond fossil fuels, you're talking about not just tens of thousands, but millions of people in the petroleum industry that would be
right. But
put
did
out of
that have
business.
anything to do with the Paris Accord?
Sure, it does, because the whole agenda here, I mean, listen to what the climate change people are talking about. They want to keep all of our fossil fuels in the ground. They want to move to virtually 100%, quote, clean energy within the next 50 years, which would put a huge number of people out of
When you say the climate change people, Steve, does that mean that you don't believe in global warming?
I'm a skeptic. Hang me in the public square, but I think the science, this idea that somehow this is settled science is complete nonsense. There are thousands of scientists who really question this. But I want to make one other quick point, if I may. I am so sick of these sanctimonious Europeans talking about how the United States isn't stepping up here. Let's be very honest about this. First of all, there is a climate change deal already. It was called the Kyoto Treaty, and Europe was a signatory to that. We were not. Europe never abided by any of those terms.
Okay, go ahead.
And the second point is that we, the United States, we're not the villain here. We have reduced our carbon emissions more than the Europeans have, and we didn't sign these agreements. So why would we believe that they would
respond? I'll agree with one thing, which is that I think that the U.S. is actually doing more, and particularly U.S. business is doing more already than it gets credit for. And I think one of the things that was fascinating, actually, about President Trump's speech is he wasn't actually denying the science of climate change. He wasn't coming out and saying, I don't believe in this. He was leaving a little bit of a door open to what I suspect in the next few weeks is going to be a broader conversation amongst business leaders. I think you're going to see CEOs coming out and saying, let's think about other ways that we can engage with this issue. The bottom line is business wants to be engaged with climate change because they know it will make the U.S. more competitive. We don't want to see China and Europe getting ahead of the conversation about standards and smart grids. We want to be part of that conversation. Right. And I think you're going to hear a lot of that. I mean, of course, the fear that now there's a vacuum of leadership.
Yeah. So, Liza, Brother Moore is advancing a political argument about these thousands of scientists that question this. I got to tell you, Steve, it's just not true. There is an overwhelming consensus in the scientific community about greenhouse gases, about humans' impact on it, and about the warming. The predictions, the indexing, the forecasts, that can get very shaky, but not the underlying premise for it. But, so, Liza, you weigh in.
Well, I would just urge people to go and read Donald Trump's speech. It's about 10 pages long. I'm not saying you should take time out of your day, but if you got time over the weekend, go read the speech, because it's not really, Ronna makes this point, it's not really about climate change.
Yeah.
It's much more about the Donald Trump worldview. And I don't say that as a critique.
That's
I don't say that as a critique. I say it as sort of a, that this is, Steve and I were talking about this on air yesterday. This is Trumpism. If you want to, everyone says, well, what does Donald Trump really think? What does Make America Great Again? What is that beyond sloganeering? Go read the speech. You may not agree with it, but it is a clear distillation. It is pure Trumpism, which is the capitals of Europe laugh at us. They mock us because we make bad deals. It is a much more cynical worldview, that we have been taken advantage of by these people, that we have gone up above and over our commitments. This is to Steve's point. We've gone above our commitments. They have not. We are being rooked here in a fundamental way, and I will not have it anymore. Again, I wouldn't say you have to agree or disagree with it. You should read it because it's really important to sort of understand how he views the world and how different that is from the people who have been president before him.
Chris, let me add to that. We as conservatives are very, very skeptical of international deals for two reasons. One is we are concerned about sovereignty. We don't want what happened in Britain, where you basically had Brussels bureaucrats telling people in Britain what kind of tea teapots they could use because they're in violation of some kind of climate change deal. But the other point is that it really is true. You look at all of these deals, and these other countries never follow through. I mean, China is building, I made this point yesterday, it's absolutely true. They're building dozens and dozens of coal plants as we're shutting down ours, and yet they're lecturing us about climate change. You have to watch what they do, not listen to what they say.
It's true that China is building a lot of coal-fired power plants, but it's also cleaning up existing ones, and more importantly, it's staying at the forefront of green technologies. It's making green tech, wind, solar power a strategic sector.
And we're doing
that's something that the U.S. needs to really stay at the forefront. And the worry is that if we pull back from the conversation, if we pull back from being involved in international standards setting and the international conversation, that we lose some of that. And that's what business leaders are concerned about.
But that argument, what you're saying is like, this is the future. You know, by the way, none of us know what the energy future is. We don't know if it's nuclear, wind, solar. No, we don't.
No, we know it's going to be renewable. We know it's not going to be fossil fuels long term, Steve.
But that's completely nonsense. 10 years ago, Barack Obama was running around the country talking about us running out of oil and gas. Now we have more oil and gas than any other country in the world because of the shale gas revolution. So nobody knows whether it's going to be nuclear, new kinds of nuclear, whether it's going to be shale gas, whether it's going to be solar, wind. But we do know that government doesn't know the answer to that.
But Steve, are you saying that by pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord that the $500,000 that you predict would be lost and the 2.7 million jobs that the president predicted would be lost, that those are going to be kept here now?
I think it's going to save a lot of jobs. Look, the regulatory burden on America costs $2 trillion to the American economy. Donald Trump, it gets to Chris's point, we're about reducing regulations on businesses,
Steve,
not adding more of them.
You can't tell those coal miners who really are in need that their industry is going to somehow come back and that those jobs are no, you know what? It's not.
It's up 16% this year. It's up 16% this year already.
Any expert, any economist in the energy sector will tell you that renewables are already as competitive as coal and that they're going to become more so in the future. These jobs are not coming back. They were gone long before the regulatory issue even came to the fore. We need to actually help train those people in new areas and give them hope, real hope.
If that is true, why we're having a big debate, Chris, in the next few months about eliminating all of these subsidies to the wind and solar industry. They're all embedded in the tax code. We want to get rid of all those and create a level playing field. What the wind industry says is if we get rid of all the subsidies to the wind industry, there's no industry left. So how can it be competitive if the only way it can possibly survive is with subsidies?
You know, I talk to a lot of CEOs, and without question, they're saying we have got to stay at the forefront of clean tech, green tech. Even, I'll tell you something, even a lot of coal executives, they won't say so on the record, they are happy with the idea of staying ahead in these technologies because they use them, things like carbon sequestering. It's very crucial. This is really an important industry for the U.S. to stay ahead in, whatever it takes.
Okay, panel.
By the way, one quick thing, Allison.
Yes.
I do not know what monocaine means or whatever that word was, and I sure as hell don't know how to spell it.
It's a fabric. It's a fabric. And I also look forward to hearing you explain what covfefe means.
Right.
Okay, for a later date. Thank you, panel.
Thanks, guys.
All right, so what is the White House saying this morning about